What's going on, guys? Thank you so much for joining us on another episode for Walking Manifestator. I'm your host, Alexa Peña, and I'm super excited to be here today. I have had a lot of people ask me in my journey in manifestations the science behind it all, right? They want to understand how something that they cannot see makes sense in this 3D reality that we exist in. So, I want to share with you some very simple, digestible things that have helped me in my journey in understanding how the things that we actually don't see are what create the things that we see in this external reality. Now, I am going to be referencing one of my favorite books. If you know, you know, I love Dr. Joe Dispenza. He has amazing information, but not only the information, the way that he synthesizes the information he is sharing is really something I appreciate. And if there is any book that I can recommend to you, it is Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. So, with that being said, I will be quoting some of his work today to get you guys started. And the first thing I want to talk about is in order to navigate the three-dimensional reality, we need to understand that when we are in this dimensional reality, we are using our senses, right? And think about it, right? In order for you to have an emotion in, let's say, a movie that you're watching, they make you feel so connected to the point that if there is a cliffhanger at the end of that movie, you can't wait to see the next movie. I'm a big Harry Potter fan. So obviously, when they left us on the Goblet of Fire, there was this like huge moment where I was just waiting for the next movie to come about. And not too long ago, I saw the movie Lucy. If you haven't seen it, definitely highly recommend that one. But it leaves you so intrigued based off the sensory that they include by making these movies feel very much real in using your sense of maybe emotion of obviously you can't necessarily feel something in that movie, but the way that they are explaining the emotions makes you feel like you're there to the point where you don't even think you're in a room that has been, again, something you've been sitting in front of a screen for maybe an hour and a half, and you completely lose track of time. This is very important to note because it leads to the second point. The more we use our senses to define reality, the more we experience separation. So, the more that you identify with your job, the more you identify with the items that you have as value that you are directly correlated to, the more you identify with this external reality, the more separated you feel from the collective consciousness being the law of one. We talked about the law of one in our last episode. And if you are starting to go down this understanding of, again, it's a way of living. It really is. I think that for the longest time, I used to believe when I was younger that, Buddhism was a religion, and I learned that it's actually a way of living. And this is just one of the ways that you can implement this into your life. And when we are understanding that the more we are identifying with these, again, material external things, the less that we are allowing ourselves to understand who we are and what our goal truly is, aside from these things that have been conditioned by our upbringing. Now, number 3 is most of this three-dimensional reality is sensory based. So space, time, this is something that creates the illusion of separation. Now, from everyone to everything to every place and everybody, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about how by becoming no one, you are everyone. By becoming no thing, you are everything. By being nowhere, you are everywhere. By being no one, you are everyone. And I think this is really powerful because back to the science behind it all. I know a lot of people that say, how do you expect me to believe something that I cannot see? However, classical physics actually shares this with us. And one of the interesting things is Isaac Newton had discussed this in his law of motion, right? The law of gravity. There is obviously a force behind something, and it wasn't actually something they could see necessarily. It was something that they started to measure, and they use that to explain what they couldn't see. And I know that sounds a little confusing, but bear with me. The double slit experiment. Okay, if you don't know what the double slit experiment is, I'm going to totally simplify it, and I highly recommend you go and watch the video for yourself. But essentially, there was these people, they were throwing particles. And again, I'm giving you the very synthesized example right now, but they were throwing these like particles through this slit, and there was one slit, and on the other side of the slit, there was essentially the wall. And when the, again, slit was open, the particles were going through that slit into the wall. Okay. Then they opened up a second slit. And when I say slit, I'm just saying like, two cuts. Think of it that way. There's two cuts. And now when they throw the particles, you would expect that they were, again, going to go directly through those two slits. Something very interesting happened when the scientists were experimenting with this, and they noticed that when they took their attention away from this experiment, the particles reacted in a very different way. And when they ended up on the other side of that slit, they were not in alignment with what they would have pictured the particles looking like when passing through the slit, which would have been, again, right on the openings of the wall in this case. What happened actually, and if you're watching this on a YouTube video, I'll make sure that I'm inserting a clip here for you guys. But what happened is that when they put their focus back onto that experiment and they expected something to happen the way that they perceived originally it was going to happen, that was exactly what happened with now the slits. Now it happened perfectly to where the particles aligned directly through the two slits that were open. To simplify this, when it comes to understanding the science behind manifestations, it's very much so like the law of gravity. The law of gravity obviously talks about how we have this gravitational pull that is bringing us to the center of the earth, right? That is just something that it's undisputable because obviously we're not flying around. However, when you expand your horizon, and we have learned that, of course, in space, that is not the same laws that are applicable. Here in Earth, we have adopted those laws based off what we understand and what we experience. And this is very important to note because the way that I have been able to start adopting the science behind it, for the longest time, I personally was somebody that if something made sense and I resonated with it, that's good enough for me. But I know that's not the case for a lot of people. And I know that there are certain things that help better solidify a message for maybe somebody that is on this trajectory of trying to understand better manifestations. So I hope this example in the law of gravity and the law of motion helps you understand that what you're placing your energy to is what you are going to actually receive in turn, just like the double slit experiment. Now, there's very interesting perspectives here, and I want to share with you one of the points as well is all things material occupy one position in space and time. That, to our brain, is essentially the material things, right? That is basically people, objects, places, things. Now, this is things that we perceive that we start creating as memories, right? So a person that you've met in the past, a person that a place that you've been to, an object that you're familiar with, all of these things start creating events in our life, which then these are patterns, and now we actually call them memories, right? Memories of something that we remember. Now, the self, if you think about it, who you are, who you identify to be, is created from memories, past experience, right? So then that means that these memories are only based on knowns, right? Things that we know to be true, a place we've been to, a person that we like, an object that we've encountered, a whatever it is that has a 3D reality, 3D being the material world, right? Something you can actually touch, experience, see. Now, this is all under this like three-dimensional concept that I want to make sure that we're very clear on. There's different dimensions, okay? And I share this because it's extremely important when it comes to your manifestation journey to understand that if you're thinking in a linear perspective, like X, Y, and Z, X is going to equivalent to, again, Y, and Y is going to be the equivalent to Z, then you're always in this restriction. You're not really allowing yourself to tap into the full possibilities of what really is happening. There's often times people that don't understand how people such as, again, amazing researchers like Dr. Joe Dispenza, and there's many others, but I'm going to use him as an example on this. They have shared studies to show that, again, by really tapping into your abilities in meditation and mindfulness, you are now able to start really operating from a higher frequency. And I'm not sure if you've heard this, but what you see is going to be your frequency, right? So what you frequently see is that frequency. So if you're constantly surrounded by lack mentality, if you're constantly surrounded by people that are judgmental or questioning things because they cannot feel it and see it and hear it, you are more likely going to be that person that is also going to be very susceptible to whatever information they're sharing with you. And I do believe that if there is anything in you that resonates with the fact that you are energy and that you will always be energy, you will understand that you can never really be destroyed. Yes, maybe your body will at one point not be here anymore. However, you are truly energy to its purest form. And it's been proven. It's been proven by science, because science obviously is something that a lot of people take very seriously, even though even science has admitted in the past that they've made mistakes, because science is simply also going off of speculation based off things that in this moment in time they have found based off what we are currently operating in the vibrational capacity to understand. But if somebody from back in the 1800s would have been shared the theories that now we have of a airplane, they would have looked at it as crazy, right? So I do believe that there are certain steps in our journey that are meant to be understood at a certain time in your life. Maybe not everything you're going to listen to today is going to resonate with you. Maybe there are certain things that are 100% going to resonate with you. And it's very important to start understanding that the more time you take to research what it is that you really want out of life, whether that be you want to impact 1,000 people, whether that mean you want to travel the world, whether that be you want to be the most amazing mom or dad, whatever it is. Starting to take time to really understand your purpose, your goal, your why, by allowing yourself to be in your energy is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself. You see, I was doing research in regards to just like the different types of physics in the term of science, right? We have your optics, classical, mechanics, chaos theory, astrophysics. We have cosmology. Like I have all my little notes here that I'm referencing back to because I just went on this deep dive, and I am fascinated by how much this correlates with manifestations, how everything that we put energy into becomes part of our 3D experience. But if you can start embodying the fact that you are a spiritual being having a physical experience in a human body. And what does that mean? Because maybe you don't understand that. To me, that just like now resonates, but maybe you're in this process of better understanding. by saying you are a spiritual being, you are understanding that you're not this little meat suit that you're looking at or listening to right now. You are the essence inside of this meat suit, being your soul, being your energy, your soul essence. Now, by being a spiritual being in a human body, right? You're a physical being having a human experience in this human body. Now you're understanding that you're simply here experiencing, experimenting, understanding. And there's a very interesting part that I want to further elaborate with you, which is definitely something that, again, as we've talked about in this episode, there's so much that goes into the laws of the universe. And the most simple one that I personally can share with you right now that is going to allow you to better understand is the law of one. The law of one is going to allow you to actually be able to live in a life where you are able to better understand that when it comes down to everything that exists, everything that is, you are connected to every single person. Therefore, if there's something you want, if there's something you are really hoping for, identify what it is, identify where you're at, identify the identity that you need to be in order for you to embody that, and start making tangible actions. And then let go of the thought. And I know it sounds very silly because for the longest time, you were maybe in a mechanical energy being that you are really much into your I need to do it masculine energy, because there's a feminine energy and there's a masculine energy, and we all have both of them within us, okay? But some of us pay more attention to others. So if you're in a situation where you're just in your mechanical, you're feeling very overwhelmed and burnt out and like you don't have a purpose in life. If you are in your feminine, right, in your masculine energy, then that means that you're not really implementing some of the strategies that you need. And there is a sense of a balance, a dance, if you will. It's not even a balance, because really balance, it's this controversial thing in terms of like, there's no work-life balance. There's no way that you can balance some of that. It's a dance. There's certain times that you're going to need to make a little bit more time for this. And there's a little bit of times where you're going to need to make more time for self-care. Sometimes you're going to need more time to go out and put in more work. But the science of manifestations is really allowing you to understand that everything that exists, everything that is as we know, truly comes from this law of one. And this law of one is something that connects all of us. And when you start living in this life of coherency being that you are connected, that you are understanding, that you are in this harmonious overall understanding, right? Understanding of what it is that you personally are trying to tap into is what allows you to start living a purposeful life. And if there's anything I can leave you with today, anything at all, that is to find your whys, but not just find your whys. Identify who you need to become in order for you to embody that, for you to attract that into your life. This is why I'm a firm believer of manifestations, because everything that I have in my life up until this point, I have manifested. I, at one point, remember filling out applications when I would apply for anything, and I would put $100,000. That is what my goal is, and that is what my income is going to be. And I remember being so far from that. I was making $16,000 a year at one point. And putting that on the application just sounded so crazy if I said it out loud. But, in my little head, I would put that on the application, and it felt good. And it felt like that is going to happen, and it's already done. I don't know how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. And when the first 100K came in, I was in a state of just like gratitude, but in the back of my head, like I already knew that this was going to happen. And I don't say this from like a point of, and again, if you're being triggered by this and you're like rolling your eyes right now or thinking like, oh yeah, easier said than done, go deeper. Where is that coming from? Because I think that coming from this perspective of manifestations and understanding that you and I are one, that we are connected, my achievements are an example of what you can achieve, and the achievements of somebody even better off in terms of what they've accomplished, because there's really nobody better than somebody else, is also my achievement. Therefore, at the end of the day, by acting in that state of awareness and knowing that everything is already done, everything is already happening, and that you are tapped into this higher version of yourself, this is how you're able to start embodying that identity that is going to allow you to attract more of what you want. Don't focus on what you don't want, focus on what you do want. And I promise you, you are going to be light years ahead of what many people at this point have been able to comprehend. You are a spiritual being having a physical experience in this human body. And with that being said, I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for the continuous people that continue to come in and tune in and watch us on YouTube, people that are downloading our podcast. I appreciate you. And with that, if you do have anything in particular that you want us to talk about, please feel free to send us a message. And I say that with my entire conviction, because I want to make sure that in the end of the day, we're building a community, walking manifestator community, where we are all growing, we are all helping each other better understand. And in the end, we are here to evolve together. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you guys on the next one.